Well, top of the morning to you, sir. How are you, Freddie?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. What Steelers player do you have jersey on right now? Tell me it's Jerome Bettis.
It is Jerome Bettis, the boss. So he was one of my first, I guess, favorite players growing up. And yeah, Sunday's a big day in our family, Steeler family. So always get together for the games and stuff. So this is who I rocked with today. Hopefully, I feel like they're going to need a Bettis type game to pull it out, kind of like, winning in the trenches sort of thing. So that was kind of my idea. Hopefully, even though I bet against them.
That was my next question. Yes, I feel like I've heard a lot of smart people. I see a lot of smart people on the Eagles. A lot of reasons to like the Eagles today. I got to tell you, just out of respect for Mike Tomlin as a dog and for being so wrong about Russell Wilson, as I like the Eagles a lot. I have no problem pulling the trigger on them. I'm just going to sit this one out.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue any of the Tomlin, I guess, history against the spread, how Ross has performed. I do think, I guess, a few situational things today, like Pickens being out against a man-heavy coverage scheme. And I mentioned, I think, earlier the week, Deshaun Elliott's not a household name by any means, the safety they brought in, but he's the best run stoppers in the NFL at his position. He's out as well with a hamstring. So I'm not as, I guess, high on some of the backups in that regard with respect to playing in the box. So I do think, there's been a lot of talk in Philly all week about the pass game and A.J. Brown throwing the helmet and talking, all this sort of stuff. So I do think it kind of profiles as a get-right game, perhaps, if, the Steelers have to overcommit to stop Saquon. I do think some of the plays over the top will be there. Steelers struggled against.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying the Steelers struggled a couple of weeks ago on the road against Burrow. A lot of penalties, a lot of kind of bigger plays. So, like I said, as a Steeler fan, I hope they win, but, you're not going to win every game. And I think kind of the, challenges stack up here. A short week coming up, like Baltimore coming up. I wouldn't be surprised. Some business decisions are made late if they do fall down. I guess that's my 2 cents. And I do think on both sides of the ball, 2 critical missing pieces hurt.
We'll talk about that game a little bit more as we go through. Freddie, you've joined us for Prop Talk before. Thank you. I am curious. So before we get started, good morning, everybody. And Ryan Sura, thank you for the early morning sub bangs. W. Ryan Sura and Owner's Box. I know you're also a big fan of them, but we were talking in the DMs about how stupid of big of an idiot Johnny Giuntana is. So I'm just kidding. You didn't say that. I said that. But thank you, Sarah, and W Owner's Box. And good morning, Freddie. Real quick before we dive in, are you a fantasy player?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm definitely not an expert. Like I have, like most people, a fantasy football league with my buddies. Do weekly DFS entries, but I don't know. I haven't really. What would you say? Feel comfortable thinking that I'm going to profit over the course of a season, particularly with the weekly DFS things. Like I have a limit on what I'm willing to spend per season.
Sure.
There was a couple of years where I hit some nice, I guess, winners, but otherwise it's kind of been recycling my money. You know, some weeks I might win
Yep.
20, lose for 4 weeks. So I love it just because it makes the other games more interesting. I don't need anything extra to keep me involved in Steelers games, but I do love the fantasy aspect and just, I guess, the overall enjoyment it brings the other, I guess, games along the slate.
Yep. Well, I want to get an idea of that because I'm sure there's the fantasy playoffs start today. So I'm pretty sure we're probably going to get a few starter sit questions. So I always just like to preface it that I'm not really a big fantasy guy. But nonetheless, I will also back that up with I am in second place. No big deal. Have a bye this week. No big deal. But I'm still happy to give my 2 cents. Steak is a better fantasy player than I am. Greg's actually pretty good, as much of an idiot as he is. But I would imagine people would still share your opinion, but we will take it with a grain of salt. I am live on TikTok as well. So there'll be some fantasy questions coming in, I'm sure. Yep. Darnold or Daniels right off the bat. We'll get to it a little bit, but we're going to get started here. It's 9:05. We'll basically, so what we do, if anybody's new to Prop Talk, we go through the board. We'll give our quick thoughts on the game in general, but I want to focus more on the prop aspect of each game. We don't have to force anything, Freddie, if you don't like it, and if you do have a side or a total, feel free to share that as well. But before we get in, actually, on that note, you're a pretty light NFL bettor, right? Just based off of what I've seen on Twitter. I mean, I don't think you have more than 1 to 2 plays a Sunday, right?
Yeah, that's it for me. I mean, there's a couple of markets I feel like I'm comfortable maybe extending myself in, but when it comes to NFL, I feel like it's one of the more efficient markets. So being able to keep up with all the injury news and perhaps the weather, the depth charts, I find it, a challenge like most if you're balancing other life demands. So I try and identify, I guess, a spot I really like, or maybe a spot in a prop, something like that, and limit it to that because I do find, I guess, starting out a number of years ago when I did try to maybe play everything that I potentially had an opinion on, it never seemed to go that well versus trying to identify, maybe limit my volume and take my chances over a long season. I feel like that's the hardest thing sometimes is we're all big fans and we all like love breaking down the matchups, but it's hard to kind of sometimes separate what are great bets versus what are opinions. And I've tried to get better at that as I've gotten a little bit older and more experienced. So it works for me, I guess, or it's working this season anyway. But I fully understand that the market itself is brutally tough. So, you go week to week and hope to survive.
Yeah, it's been no secret. We obviously we do the newsletter, and we're in year 4 of that, where we give our favorite bets. This is the first year we've really honed in on the best bets, and then we give a few other plays that we like. And we came out of the gate with a 5-0 first week, which for whatever reason historically we've done very well in week 1. But then we crashed from like weeks 3 through 8, 9. So I think record wise, we're back to 31 and 35, but units are down because our best bets have been horrible. So I am trying to really be a little bit more selective and hone in. My best bets were 1 and 6 at one point. They're 7, 6 and 1 right now. And I did state in the newsletter, if anybody read it, this is probably going to be the one that loses. We'll talk about it a little bit, Freddie, because I do see a lot of smart people going against me in this total in Tennessee because of some weather maybe in Nashville. It's very windy.
Yep.
But we'll get into that. I do love this over. I've loved it all week, and those are probably going to be the ones that typically in the NFL that you lose, and especially in the prop market. So anyways, let's get into it. The first game on the slate is actually Greg's best bet. I'll pull up the shared screen for everybody. And again, good morning if you're joining in Prop Talk, whether you are in YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter. And Freddie, or TikTok, thank you for joining. We really appreciate it, and love having your insights and feedback on all things sports. So, all right, the Texans and the Dolphins. Greg is on the Dolphins as his best bet, but we actually all aligned on this play, which again might be a scary thing, and you might not want to find yourself on that side. But we like the Dolphins in this spot, and again, I know Freddie. I don't know if you're a RAS guy or Adam Chernoff or whatnot. I follow him. I like him, whether I agree or disagree with him. I've got my certain things I'll be critical about and whatnot. But for the most part, I think he's a very knowledgeable guy, smart guy, kind of just straight down the middle with what he has to share and information and everything. But I think he is on the Texans. And the one thing I understand is the Texans are coming out of a bye. I know that this bye for Houston probably was very well timed late in the season. So I think this worked out very well for them. They grinded out a win coming into it. Actually, they grinded out 2 wins back-to-back in the division against Tennessee. No, I'm sorry, that was a loss. They lost to Tennessee, and then they went on the road and beat Jacksonville 23-20. That was a little bit of a weird game. Obviously, remember when Lawrence went down and whatnot. And then on the flip side, you've got Miami coming in, and they've looked pretty damn good since Tua's gotten back. So they've won 4 of 5. The loss was in the chilly cold where they can never win against Green Bay. But something that I have grown fond of is Tua since his return. And I remember we faded him in Buffalo, and I had a terrible feeling about it. And what I saw from him in that week just had me basically not wanting to be on the side of fading the Miami Dolphins. And if you look at his props, I'm pretty sure he has had 3 straight 100-yard games. One benefited against the Jets. I think he only hit that number because the game went into overtime, but he was incredible in overtime. The Dolphins were kind of fucking around in that game. And then I think in overtime, he was like 5 for 5, finally found Jonnu Smith, who was quiet all game. Tyreek Hill finally had a big 10 catch, 115-yard game. So I'm with the Dolphins. I don't know where I stand on the total. I kind of lean under. I thought this would be a popular over. It looks like the numbers moved down a point or two from 47 to 46. I don't know if that's 100% correct, though. You could do your own research on that. Yeah, it's down to 45.5. I wonder if there's an injury or something. But the last thing I'll say, Freddie, and then I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this game. I have noticed that defensive-minded head coaches coming out of the bye, we do see improvements on that side of the ball. You even saw in Atlanta with Raheem Morris. I mean, Atlanta still is not very good, and they just allowed 42 points to the Vikings. But their biggest weakness was they had no pass rush. Now they're getting to the passer. They got to Herbert. They even got to Darnold. So just something to be mindful of. Do you have anything you like in Dolphins versus the Texans?
No, this will be one that I have the least opinion on. I think it sets up to be maybe one of the better matchups of the day. You see some kind of crazy spreads and maybe, like you said, weather games. But obviously this one, from a viewer point of view, probably should be, play out how you might think. I guess for me, like you were saying, like, yeah, sure enough, to me, I listen to his morning podcast for sure. Gives out a lot of good info that perhaps maybe you look past. Don't really have an opinion on RAS. Don't really know a whole lot about them outside of I do feel like sometimes on social media, maybe they don't act appropriately, but that's conversation for a different day. With respect to this one, like, the Texans out of the bye for sure, like D'Amico Ryans, I looked at some of his stuff the week, and he did seem confident that, as you mentioned there, it was at the right time for them. I think they played in the Hall of Fame game this year. So not only they have like a late bye, but they also had the extra week built in. That kind of, creates wear and tear through the season. They've obviously had some injuries there with Nico going down for a bit. So probably a reset for them, no doubt. I guess in this game, prop wise, the first name that came to mind to me perhaps was Jalen Waddle, just because, again, like Houston's known defensively for the pass rush. And I've thought recently, anyway, too, has done a good job getting the ball out a bit quicker. Waddle kind of, to me, is the guy who can find those soft areas and zones, these types of things. I'm not going to play it just because, again, I'm not fully confident on that read. And from the Texans side, I've just found them to be a difficult team to read all year offensively. Stroud has had his inconsistencies. Most weeks it's kind of leaning on the run game. So I'm not quite sure what to back there. So I wish you guys good luck in, I guess, the Dolphins, I guess, +3, is it? I read your newsletter earlier this week. I think it's Dolphins +3.
Yep.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. I mean, they're playing good football, desperate. I guess the Texans, from most people's opinion, I would think, is a big underachiever. So I guess we'll see what they look like out of the bye. But yeah, Waddle is kind of the name that came to my mind, just because I think, Will Anderson and some of those pass rushers the Texans have is going to require game plan that means short, quick passing. And I think Waddle is, the guy who can kind of get into those short windows, whether it be on slants or quick outs or whatever the case may be. But that's a very kind of soft opinion for sure.
I'm into it. I'm going to put an underdog entry together. By the way, if anybody is watching or in the Twitch stream, at the very top of the stream, there's a link. If you want to sign up for underdog, you can use our referral code DGen for 50% deposit match. We always put one together, Freddie. A couple of weeks have been unsuccessful. Had a nice little run there in MLB, but our guy Steak loves reception. So I'm going to lean into your player. with Waddle, and then I'm going to go with what Steak would usually tell me to do, and that is receptions. So Waddle higher than 4.5 receptions is going to go in today. And then real quick, as I had warned, we're going to get a lot of fantasy questions. We're getting a shit ton in TikTok. We can't address all of them, or else we'd be here doing that all day rather than go through the game talking props. Tua or Hurts? And I'm just curious, very quickly. You'd have to imagine. I know you like the Eagles today, but Tua's playing in a dome. Would you lean Tua?
Yeah, it's tough for me because that makes total sense from a football point of view, weather control. But
sure,
it tells me today, Barkley's going to get that extra attention. Tomlin was talking about him all week, and all the AJ Brown stuff about the pass game, and I think Hurts hasn't broke 200 yards in I don't know ages now. He's been. Something tells me between his legs and the arm, Hurts is going to have a big day. But again, I would trust your own gut there. Certainly, Tua on paper probably has the more predictable matchup. But for me, it would be Hurts. I think it's going to.
All right. Freddie says Hurts. I would real quick, CJ Stroud for president. Yeah, I don't like the Dolphins defense, so I am worried about Stroud today. Although I'm going to lean into Stroud regressing in year 2, which has been happening for the most part of the season. DJ, how do you feel about Achane rushing and receiving if you like the Dolphins? I'm always an Achane guy, but for whatever reason, he's kind of let me down. And I watched some of that game against the Jets, and I was expecting a little bit, a few more explosive plays from him and didn't get it. All right, Freddie, let's go to what I feel like might be one of the weirdest games of the weekend, and that is Washington and the Saints. I, for the life of me, can't get over how easy the Commanders look in this spot. And I know 7.5 is not a nice number to lay on the road in the NFL, no matter who you're playing against. But I mean, come on, we have moneyline parlays, we have teasers, you have survivor pools. In no way, in my head, and I think anybody's head, given the injuries to the Saints right now, with Derek Carr being out and Jake Haener playing, I think like the Commanders look like the easiest bet on the board. They're coming out of the bye week, but at the same time, there's 2 look-ahead spots. If you guys believe in look-aheads, there are 2 teams. You talked about the Steelers, maybe. I'm not so sure because they're playing a big opponent. I think they're still going to take that game a little bit more seriously, but the Ravens, who I believe you guys play next week, are double-digit favorites on the road against the Giants. And then the Commanders are going to play the Saints when they have do they have the Eagles next week? They do. They have the Eagles next week.
Yep. Eagles at home. Yep.
These are 2 very scary spots, in my opinion. If you believe in the look ahead factor, I like it a little bit more in college than the NFL, but I would have to imagine the Commanders probably going into this week of rest or extra prep and whatnot had the Eagles game on their mind a lot more than they had this Saints matchup in New Orleans. So for me, if I was still in my peak contrarian ways, I would be all over the Saints, but I just can't do it anymore. It's not treating me well. It's not working out like that. I'm going to be a little bit smarter. I don't want to bet on bad teams. I've also faded the Commanders twice with my best bets and got burned both times. But I want to ask you this. Prop wise, I don't know that I have anything in mind, even on the Commander side. But I was going to lean into maybe some sort of under and maybe a Saints team total under, because as I had talked about, defensive-minded head coaches coming out of bye weeks, Dan Quinn is great on that side of the ball. The Commanders' defense has been better than people have expected. I think going into this year, the Commanders and the Cardinals were everybody thought were going to be the worst defenses in the league.
Yep.
I think if anything, I would probably square up with maybe something like an under for the Saints team total, or maybe an under in the game if the Commanders, get a lead and just kind of play conservative, like you had mentioned about the Steelers, close the playbook up a little bit and leave it for next week with the Eagles. So anyways, it's long-winded for a game that I don't really have a strong opinion about, but I think there's going to be some weird stuff in this game. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think you described it pretty well here. I mean, the Commanders feel like the easiest button to push just because, I mean, if you've watched Haener at this level, no Shaheed, no Taysom Hill, no Olave. Kamara, I think, was sick all week. So where does the offense come from, I guess? And as you mentioned, Commanders out of a bye have had a chance to game plan specifically around kind of, New Orleans playbook. I guess from a different point of view, I suppose, to look at a prop, it would have to be for me, if anything, Brian Robertson Jr., who I believe is coming back off an ankle.
Mm-hmm.
Saw some stuff earlier this week, how he felt good. Austin Eckler also was put on IR, so the workload should be there.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if I've faded the Saints a few times since they made the coaching change. One of the reasons why is their rush defense has been, bottom five in
Mm-hmm.
all year. So I guess tying it into your potential under and I guess a big spread over a touchdown. If they do get ahead, you would think it's going to be, all right, let's run the ball. Let's keep the clock moving. Let's get out of town. And I think, Robinson, I think I was looking this morning. I didn't play it, but I think his rush prop is somewhere in the mid 70s. I do think the volume will be there. And if the game script aligns with Commanders leading, I think he's probably your guy. On the other side, very tough to kind of highlight a Saint just because they have so many guys out. Juwan Johnson is obviously the playmaker there, I suppose, if anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Big tight end. Anytime I watch him, he seems to make a crazy catch, even though he's a big guy. He seems to have phenomenal hands. So, I don't know who else they throw the ball to today. They've been activating guys off their practice squads seemingly weekly. So, from a prop point of view, I think it would be Robinson Jr. rush yards or Juwan Johnson receiving yards or receptions. I haven't looked at his market, but those are the two names that make sense to me, I guess, and again, another non-impacted weather game. So perhaps you get those two guys produced. But yeah, to go back to your original point, I've given up kind of trying to bet what I feel is the easiest looking thing in the NFL. I don't know.
Sure.
When I was a little bit younger with a group of buddies, you create this big money line parlay, and no doubt the Commanders will be in there for sure. Like, that's easy money, my friends would say, but there's always this one crazy result in the NFL that, and I'm not saying this will be it, but I think you said you're expecting unexpected things. Like, the Saints have nothing to lose here. Like, would they fake a punt? Would they fake a field goal? Would they go for it more on fourth down? Like, these are the things now with their season kind of, over. They have nothing to lose. Perhaps they'll pull it all the stops to maybe try and win one at home. So I don't know.
I love what you said, and I am going to officially add it. Brian Robinson Jr., higher than 75.5 rushing yards, because it kind of aligns into my game script as well. I do. Maybe the Commanders, I don't know that they're going to win this. I don't know that they're going to cover this game. Obviously, I still think they win this game, but I think they're going to get up, be a little bit more conservative, run the ball. I do remember from being on the Saints when they played the Falcons. Still feel quite lucky to get that cover because the Falcons dominated, moved the ball at will, and Bijan had I think one of his better games of the season. So yeah, I'm going to lean into that and tell you there. So Waddle higher than receptions, Brian Robinson Jr. higher than rushing yards is what I got so far. I'll probably add one more and then call it a day. Then make another one here. So again, these are just for fun. If you guys are doing player prop parlays, this is not to get rich or build a bankroll. This is for fun. Please bet responsibly. Okay, Jets and the Jags. Listen, I have had Steak and Greg tell me to cut it out with the Jets bullshit for weeks now. We all have the Jets to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, that ticket is dead, but I thought that they would turn it around for many more weeks than they did. I have officially given up on the Jets, but you know what? Everybody's given up on the Jets. What happened last week in Miami? They played probably one of their best games offensively. I did take Aaron Rodgers as my weekly special to have the most passing yards. He came up about 8 or 9 short. I think, Freddie, that I'm going to lean into this. I'll make it quick. I like the Jets. I'm not going to play them. I'm going to try to be a little bit smarter, but I like Aaron Rodgers because this is why. This is so stupid. Makes no sense at all. But at the same time, it makes so much sense that the New York Jets would start looking as competent and as good offensively as they have all season when the season is officially over and they are eliminated from playoff contention, because that's just how the Jets franchise goes. So right. I'm going to lean into Rodgers passing yards, probably higher than, I don't know what it is. I'm going to go on Underdog right now and take a look at it. I'm sure probably one of these receivers I think would have a big day. A couple people in TikTok did ask if Breece Hall was playing. I don't know. Don't rely on me for injury news. Do your own research there. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers, it's low, 225.5 passing yards, but I don't care because before the game in Miami, he was at 185 and 184. So I'm going to just keep riding Aaron Rodgers and see what happens unless he gets shut down for injury for any reason. Any thoughts on the Jets -3, total 40.5 in Jacksonville?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. Rogers, I know he was called it the week. I think it was Ryan Healer kind of say, and this guy is done playing when the talent goes. Like nobody's gonna give a what about him, like just an asshole type thing. And it would be like a moment to Jets fans to obviously stink it up all year and probably like run the table here now and impact their draft position. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. I kind of agree with what you're saying. Usually from the DFS market, I try and target a receiver going up against the Jags because their secondary has certainly struggled all year. I think they're bottom 5 in EPA allowed. They're a man-heavy group. I think they're top 5 in man coverage rate. So I guess that leads you to Devontae Adams or Garrett Wilson. Wilson had the big game last week. That was the only thing that kept me off him. I was kind of eyeing him, I guess, last week, saying I'd like him in this matchup, but it would have to be Wilson for me, if anything, just because he, I think if you look at his pass grade on PFF versus man coverage, he's, right up there with some of the elites. And I mean, Rodgers is a guy who can still throw that, back shoulder, deep ball, pretty well if he has time. So yeah, be Garrett Wilson, I think for me. I just don't trust Adams as much anymore. It seems like his explosiveness is starting to go on the decline, whereas Wilson's still a guy who can catch a short 5-yard slant and take it to the house. So you got a lot of different ways that you can probably get his yardage in a game where he's probably going to be manned up a little bit more. So yeah, I like Garrett Wilson, and like you, won't be surprised at all if the Jets kind of find a way to be successful down the stretch and kind of agonize their fan base as their draft position starts to kind of go in the wrong direction. So yeah, be Wilson for me.
Wilson is back-to-back games with 10 targets
Yep.
against Seattle, 5 catches, 41 yards, and then last week, 7 catches, 114 yards. Kind of
Yep.
like that angle. I like that angle. Yeah, I always get nervous with teams with weapons that I'm going to pick the wrong one. So that's
Right.
why I'm always a little apprehensive to go with a wide receiver.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm into it. I can see it. All right, let's keep moving here. Freddie, very curious to hear what you think about this game. In terms of props, I have absolutely no read. I won't spend too much time on it, but Panthers hosting the Dallas Cowboys. The Carolina Panthers are a favorite for the first time. And I got to tell you, I am shocked at how many people I see betting on the Carolina Panthers as a favorite. Now, I think if you're doing this, if you're laying money, if you're putting money on the Panthers laying points, you're probably doing it more so to fade the Dallas Cowboys, thinking that the Cowboy season is over and they've given up. I totally understand that. I just have a hard time with certain players, teams, coaches, when they've been in an underdog role and only an underdog role, seeing them as a favorite for the first time, I can't get there. I don't know if you think it's contrarian, if you think it's whatever. I cannot get there putting money on the Carolina Panthers today. Total 43.5. Do you have any thoughts on Panthers Cowboys?
Not really, but I agree in the sense that, with so many games and different markets to bet on, Carolina as a favorite definitely wasn't high on my list. I kind of get Dallas coming off a Monday nighter against Cincy, a Thursday Thanksgiving game, and now kind of you're at the what you call like the back 9 of the season where they have very little to play for. So I guess you question players' motivation and these types of things, which is, I assume, where the betting market is coming from. I mean, I saw Carolina last week, and I know they played Philly tough, but if you dig into the metrics, it wasn't that impressive. I think they were under 4 yards per play. Success rate was low. I think that cover was probably more reflective on the Eagles maybe sleepwalking a bit than it was some big improvement in the Panthers. That's my opinion.
Well said, by the way. Well said.
You know what I mean? Am I rushing to bet either side or no? Because I could certainly see the Cowboys come in here and not give a what and
right.
I'll get blown out. Give up a ton on the run game and these types of things. But the Panthers, to me, just aren't a team that I want my money on, particularly in this role. It's one thing to kind of bet them as over a touchdown underdog where you're getting points, but now to win, I think it's probably 3 or something like that. The win by over football seems, like you said, a big change in role that certainly could happen, but I wish people best of luck with it. I mean, betting prop-wise, I guess if you look at what Dallas has been doing lately, even on Monday night, their Dowdle makes sense. Carolina's rush game. If you looked at Barkley last week, I mean, gashing them again. And Daddle's been a guy who's gotten more and more, I guess, volume as the season has gone along. So, again, I'm not going to bet it just because, I don't know. There's other games I've already bet, but that would be the only name, Rico Daddle, that I would consider, I suppose.
Okay. Like that. By the way, this guy, Toby Valora in YouTube is hilarious. He's always got a first drive bet. Toby, I don't know if that came before or after I bet a couple first drive wagers. Please do so responsibly. Again, they're just for fun. I would go Panthers first drive turnover. I think that would be hilarious because I could just see myself betting on the Panthers and being like, ooh, I'm being contrarian, whatever. And then right out of the gate, it's a fumble interception. I'm like, shit, what am I doing with money on the Panthers? Right. Before big first drive punt. I love that. All right. Good stuff, Freddie. I really like what you said there about maybe not overreacting to the Panthers game last week in terms of what they did, but more so the Eagles sleepwalking. Okay. I mean, I guess we can touch on it. Ravens, Giants. I have absolutely nothing. I can't lay 17 points with the Ravens on the road or any team on the road. Total 42.5. I think the Giants are miserable. They have no incentive to win football games. I've said this for weeks. I've even warned their fans, stop putting yourself in traffic and spending money on these games. Although now I see that they're like $2 to get in. So fine if you want to. Absolutely nothing on my end. 42.5. Do you have anything in this game?
Yeah, actually, bet a prop in this game. I bet.
Okay.
That Daniel Bellinger, the I guess now starting tight end for the Giants, over 14.5 receiving yards, and then I had a bet on alt over 40 receiving yards.
Oh my God! You picked 2 or 3 wagers on an NFL Sunday, and one of them you have is the tight end for the Giants.
Tommy DeVito at quarterback, right? So about. Yeah, so for me, I guess, very familiar with the Ravens being in the North.
Sure.
And you already kind of teased the Ravens have the Steelers on deck. They're a 17-point favorite. So I kind of envision plenty of different avenues where this can cash at only needing 50. Number one, teams have been throwing against the Ravens basically at the highest rate above expectation. Their D-line is pretty good, but their secondary certainly is where the weaknesses are. And Bellinger's a guy who's taken over now from Theo Johnson. Johnson was hurt a couple weeks ago, I believe, in the Thanksgiving game. And I guess when I started to look at what DeVito did, I looked this morning at some of his previous starts this year and previous years. He actually played 5 games last year with Bellinger, and each game had 2 receptions. I believe there's a couple of games there over 30 yards. And it kind of makes sense. Like if you're working with the second team, third team guys, these guys probably already have a relationship. So, when DeVito gets put in there, a big tight end that he's probably throwing to every day, it makes a lot of sense. The Ravens have struggled kind of against in the middle of the field too. I think they're last in EPA allowed in the middle and 5th most receiving yards to tight ends. So I kind of like the matchup there. I was reading something the Giants put out, and it said that, they're allowing Bellinger to go more in passing routes. I think he played 80% of snaps last week because they have Chris Manhertz, their backup now tight end, doing more of the blocking role, which is going to be necessary today because I think the Giants are down like multiple O-line starters. So I think he's just kind of in a spot where nobody really knows who he is. He hasn't got much volume over the last few years. And the Ravens struggle against that part. And even if he doesn't get much volume early, the Ravens are up 20-25 late with the Steelers next week. They go prevent defense, a few little dump offs. And you're there. So I thought it was worth a shot for those reasons, but I could look like a big clown in a few hours when DeVito throws for 20 yards total. And, but that's kind of my angle on it. I just thought that he's a guy who's getting a bigger role now that nobody, including the betting market, knows about or is even thinking about. But, those are kinds of the angles I look for, guys that you can probably get them 1 or 2 catches versus needing, 80, 90 yards.
Sure. I think the last time we had you on Prop Talk, I wanted to try to remember the guy that you gave us. It was a Browns receiver. Was it like Cedric Tillman or something?
Tillman before he broke out. Yeah, for sure.
But I believe in that game you had his over and he hit that like in the first half.
Same sort of thing. I forget. I think it was the week they traded Amari, maybe.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
Tillman's a guy who's coming up from, I think he's a second-year player, like not getting much volume, but reading some of the stuff again from the North that they believed in and wanted to see what they had.
Sure.
So that was a week where I believe, whatever his prop was, I think it was in the 20s, but then I altered him over 70, 50 or 75, whatever it was. I'd have to go back and look, and for sure he had a big day, and probably luck on my part, but same sort of reasoning where you get a guy elevated, probably that they're interested to see. Like the Giants are going nowhere. They probably have to see what they have in this guy from a tight end point of view, who they've kind of buried a little bit. Like they brought in Waller, obviously Theo Johnson. And like I said, I think DeVito has a relationship with him. And if you just look at some of their past game logs, he gives them the ball, and you probably only need a couple of targets there to clear this. And I gamble a little bit on the alt over 40 because
love that.
If things are going well, it's not really that much more to get over 40 yards too, because I do think DeVito is not going to be a guy who's going to be, throwing the ball 30, 40 yards down the field to neighbors. So I think he probably has to live more with the short, quick stuff. So in my mind, I envision kind of a moving pocket, roll a quick, short passes to the tight end to get him maybe engaged in the game, and a couple of quick dump offs later, and hopefully I can cash that one.
Yep. This has like at worst case, like garbage time glory written all over it.
Right.
All right. Cedric Tillman is a perfect segue into the Cleveland Browns and Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are, let's see, they were -4 earlier in the week. Are they 4.5 now? Looks like they're 4.5 on DraftKings and FanDuel. For some other places, total is 41.5. Freddie, this would be my square play of the week. I would go with the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Browns quite well. It's a roller coaster with Jameis. I think the Jameis party is probably officially over. It's kind of up and down. And we've done a pretty good job for the most part of like betting on it and timing it fairly well. Had him against the Ravens. And then, when did we fade him? I can't remember. But anyways, with the Chargers. The Chargers, I think, came into town and beat him after that Ravens win. So here's where I'm at with this. We had him against your Steelers, and, I actually don't regret the bet. I didn't watch the game from start to finish. I'm assuming you did if you watch every Steelers game religiously. You correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, I thought the Browns came out of that game, started the game as well as they could have until they missed 2 field goals. And that was not even so much about the points on the board, but just deflating momentum wise. And I was looking at the box scores because I work on weekends, and I saw Russell Wilson was 7 of 14 with 39 yards in the first half. And I was like, this is pathetic. Of course, the Steelers found a little rhythm, benefited from some turnovers and and whatnot, and came out of that. But this is a spot where if you think Jameis Winston is going to have that bounce back type of performance, or the Browns are going to go up and down, and they just had it down, I think the score last week did not tell as much of the story of the Browns not being totally putrid. Again, I could be wrong, but my problem here is I am so scared to finally go in and fade the Chiefs after they've failed to cover in 8 straight games, because I know as soon as I do it, that's going to be the fucking 35-point Patrick Mahomes flawless masterclass start to finish. And I got to tell you, people have said they think this line is crazy and it's short. I'm not so sure. I agree with that. I could be way off here, but given that the Chiefs almost lost to the Raiders, almost lost to the Chargers, they're just failing to cover numbers. And the Browns, we've seen them beat the Steelers, beat the Ravens at home. You can only give them so many points as a home dog, I think. So I don't think that is crazy short line. I am not running to bet the Browns. If anything, it would be Chiefs or nothing. In terms of a player prop, it would have to be Mahomes for me. I don't know. Again, this division very well. If there's any sort of weakness in the Browns defense that you think the Chiefs could exploit, I'd love to hear it. But again, if you don't have any thoughts, feel free to pass on the game.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. When I watched the game last week, Cleveland certainly started well. 2 missed field goals, like you said, and poor Jameis decision on the screen pass that Keanu Benton, the Steelers nose tackle, picked off, set the Steelers up in Browns territory, and really the game Steelers were able to dictate the terms. Then if the Steelers get ahead, particularly by multiple scores with their pass rush, if they make teams one-dimensional, a very tough team to beat. But going back to what you're saying with Wilson and stuff, the offense didn't really move the ball that well, which is kind of why I targeted playing against them today, because it's the same situation. But in this game, I think you betting wise, to me, I believe it opened around 6 and now down to 4. I think a lot of times, I guess your big professional bettors will look at weather first. And I looked this morning, and this looks like our rain game with sustained winds. If you haven't been to the stadium in Cleveland, it's right on the water there. The wind is a big factor, which obviously kind of mucks the game up more, which obviously helps an underdog. Another thing I think the Browns have going for them is they're a man-heavy defense with talented corners. And I guess if you've watched the Chiefs this year, no doubt they've found ways to win. But I guess the area that they're most, I guess, susceptible is just playmakers out wide. So I think Mahomes probably has to be. I mean, he's a magician; he can extend plays and break open, no doubt. But I think on the surface, I think the Browns match up okay, and it does kind of profile as a game that they'll show up for. Like their fan base will be there because it's the Chiefs. So I think you'll probably get Myles Garrett and the D line their care. With respect to Jameis, I mean, he has a big arm. So if you're playing kind of these wing games, he's certainly a guy who will continue to rip it down the field. So there'll be some plays that made there. For me, I guess, and I don't know if I've seen this talked about, but I'm sure it is a big narrative on Twitter and stuff. Travis Kelce is obviously from Ohio and Cleveland. He's still the Browns in their kind of, I guess, series history.
Travis Kelce.
Yeah, so he'd be the guy. I mean, if I'm going back to wind, very windy game with talented corners, what's Mahomes going to do? He's probably going to look for his buddy Kelce in the field. So who, like I said, has played for here, probably family and friends there. And, you know, in long seasons, sometimes when like the Chiefs who win every week, sometimes I guess the motivation for the veterans might not be at its highest, but Kelsey's probably your guy today. I don't know what he's been up to lately. I know podcast is pretty entertaining, but I think this probably profiles the Kelsey game just because of the wind and the Browns' talented corners. But yeah, that'd be my best take on it.
Like that. I haven't heard his name too often, but yep, 5 catches, 7 catches, 6 catches, a lot of targets against the Raiders. He hasn't really blown up in terms of the yardage and has not scored in the past couple of weeks. Don't mind that one bit now that you mention it. So I think I'm going to go higher than receiving. So I got a receiving, a rushing, and a receptions. That might be my 3-piece in the afternoon slate at least. Okay. Total 41.5 in that game. Probably would stay away from points. All right, Freddie, let's go to my best bet. The Cincinnati Bengals are on the road playing Tennessee. And if I can get an updated number here, it looks like the Bengals are up to 5.5. I saw 5 mostly throughout the week. And total is down. I think it was 49 earlier or open, and it got bet down because this is supposed to be a high wind game. I don't know if it's going to be raining, but from what I understand, the wind is what factors most into total. So I think it's going to be 10, 11 mile an hour winds, but gusts up to like 25 to 28 miles per hour. The last I checked. So here's my thing. Okay. I am not one of those types of bettors that necessarily leans too much into the weather, but I'm also not somebody who bets against it trying to be the smartest guy in the room or go against all the smartest guys in the room. So I do think that this is a sharp, smart pro play on the under, but I've liked it in terms of the matchup. So I'm going to remove weather out of the equation. Now that could totally fuck me, and I'll feel like an idiot, and I will respect the wind a little bit more moving forward. But I'm going to close my eyes and lean into it because what I like about this is the Brian Callahan playing his former team, the Cincinnati Bengals. So if you're not familiar, Brian Callahan, I believe, is a 40-year-old head coach for the Titans, and he was the offensive coordinator for 4 years with the Bengals. Although we know, I think Zach Taylor calls the plays in Cincinnati. I could be wrong there, but I saw a Bengals team against the Cowboys that didn't look to me like they necessarily given up on the season, even though that was very close and they could have lost, and that would have been very, very embarrassing. But Burrow is still out there playing football. Jamar Chase is still out there playing football. They look good. And they look like they were having fun, at least towards the end of the game, smashing donuts on each other's face, whatever. The Titans, on the other hand, are pretty abysmal. It was probably one of my best reads going into the season. I'm on their under win total, which could cash today if they lose.
What's
that?
I said, I remember you saying that. Good call.
Yes, thank you. So Here's where I'm at, though. There have been times offensively they have impressed me. Will Levis always makes that costly turnover, but they still can move the ball down the field. They still go for the big plays, and the Bengals defense is atrocious. And they're on a short week after playing the Cowboys. I think after a 6-point performance where they didn't score a touchdown against the Jags, this might be the last opportunity for the Titans to get up, play at least for something, a little bit of respect and dignity. I think you're going to get a points from the Titans, and that's still at the end of the day. I don't think that the Bengals are going to show up and Joe Burrow is going to put on a stinker against the Titans. So I just see this as kind of a back and forth game. I'm on the over 46.5 as my best bet, and weather permitting, I got to tell you, I love this bet. But like I've said, it's the ones we like the most where we end up getting our ass kicked in the NFL. So please tread with caution, tail with caution if you're on this. And Freddie, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Oh, and then last thing, if Tony Pollard plays, that is my guy for today because the Bengals run defense and D-line is terrible. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Bengals Titans?
Yeah, I thought I saw a tweet from one of the insiders very early this morning, overnight, saying Pollard is expected to play. I guess we'll see how through.
Yes.
So I tend to agree. Like earlier this week when I wasn't like looking at weather, because I find that's kind of I don't know, it can change so much in a number of days leading out. I kind of like points here as well, just because you mentioned the Callahan narrative, very familiar with what defense the Bengals are running, their personnel there, what their strengths and weaknesses are. Mm-hmm. And if you look at what he's wanted to do his career when he's with Cincy or elsewhere, he likes to throw the ball, and the Bengals secondary, as you mentioned, is very weak. So originally I had targeted to want to play Will Levis Sunday passing leader. This is a game where I think it means a lot to Callahan to probably get this one against his buddies. Levis, I was reading some stuff he was mentioning earlier the week saying he was happy with how he's progressing. Some of the metrics and, box score stuff doesn't necessarily indicate, the progressions he's making with respect to decisions and getting the ball out, these types of things. And I think they're very motivated to see what they have with him going forward. So I read that as we want to throw the ball and put it in his hands because we're at a point in the season where what else do we have to gain? And the matchup dictates that they're going to throw the ball. And I mean, if you look on the other side with Tennessee is definitely a pass funnel defense because they're strong D-line. They're Jeffrey Simmons and Sweat and all those other guys. I think they're top 5 in neutral pass rate allowed. Teams are just not even bothering to run the ball just because it's not plus EV, we'll say. If you're looking at Taylor, who's kind of a younger guy who's in the analytics, I'm sure he's going to want to throw the ball too. And, has the talented wideouts to do it with Chase and Higgins and all those guys. I haven't been able, and I'm not a meteorologist. I don't know kind of what the latest is on the winds. If the winds are down, I love your bet. If it's, like you said, if the gusts are in the 30s or 25s, that generally has been when throwing the ball is tricky. So it makes sense from a football point of view. It's just, what are the conditions like here? Maybe pop the previews on there now and kind of see what the reporters are saying. But as long as it's not ridiculous, I think it profiles the game where both teams would prefer to throw the ball. It's just, will they be able to, I guess, is the question.
And then on that note, you talked about Levis passing leader. I don't hate that at all. I like Ridley as well. It's funny. I mean, people would probably think like, the answer is yes. I kind of like the Titans in this game. That would be my nasty, gross dog of the day. I would lean into the Titans +5. I don't think the Bengals are a safe, money line or whatever type of bet that you would have in mind for them. I like points. I like them to come from Tennessee, and that's going to force the Bengals to also put some up as well. So whether you go Levis, like Freddie said, I like Ridley too. He had 12 targets, 7 catches, 59 yards last game. And then I like Pollard. I'm scared of betting on someone with an injury. And because some of that stuff, for example, I didn't bet on him, but Bucky Irving was clearly hurt against the Panthers last week when he was announced to play. I did start him in fantasy, and he had like 2 points. He played a little bit, then he came out. Like, that stuff is real. It's towards the end of the season. I'm sure they don't want to jeopardize Pollard's long-term health. So I'm not going to hammer him or ladder him, but do like what you said there with the passing game. All right, Freddie, we get to the late slate here, 4:25 p.m. Patriots and the Cardinals. I am very, very intrigued by this matchup in the weirdest way imaginable because I've had my eye on the Cardinals for the past 2 weeks. We did bet on them last week against the Seahawks.
Yep.
This is a team that to me is so hard to figure out because some weeks they look so good and you want to run up and bet Kyler Murray to win the MVP. And then some weeks they are so frustrating. And it's
Yep.
like, how can they not figure it out with Marvin Harrison Jr.? How can they only score 6 points out of a bye on the road against Seattle? It's very frustrating. I think this is a week they show up and they put up some points. However, I kind of think the Patriots do too. I like the over in this game, but also I like the Patriots because I've said one thing that I might have to put my money where my mouth is. I've said it would be so Arizona Cardinals to win 4 straight games going into the bye week and then lose 4 straight games coming out of the bye week. So I don't know where your head's at in this game. I would love if you had a player prop, even if you just dug one up, whether that be on the Patriots or the Cardinals side of the ball.
Yep.
And then while you talk, I'm going to go use the bathroom real quick. So feel free to just keep it running.
Yeah, sure. Definitely makes sense for points. I mean, the Cardinals, I think, are coming off 2 offensive stinkers. I believe it was at Minnesota and then home last week, as you mentioned, against Seattle. Now, I suppose a big step down in class versus the Pats. So I do think you will see a rebound there. And as DeGen said, Murray is certainly a hard guy to trust. I have him on my fantasy team this year, so it's been kind of a roller coaster. Know what he's saying for sure. In terms of a prop for me, it would have, he mentioned him, but it would have to be Marvin Harrison Jr. I played him a couple of weeks ago when I suppose it got out there pregame that they were going to try and force feed him the ball or really get him going. But in this particular matchup, the Patriots are a very man-heavy defense led by, of course, Christian Gonzalez. I believe they're top 5 in man-to-man rate. But if you look at what Kyler does against man, it's a look for Harrison Jr. I think he has a 30% target share, according to PFF, which is top 10 in the NFL, with a very good receiving grade. And Gonzalez is not a guy who is going to, move around the field with other top targets. So I do think Harrison is probably your guy to go there today. I know it's hard to trust Kyler, but in this spot, like you said, stepping down in class against a man-heavy defense. So I don't know how much of that you heard, Jim, but my guy would be Harrison Jr. just because, again, Patriots are man-heavy defense, top 5 rate, and Harrison Jr. is top 10 in the NFL in target share against man. So it would make total sense for the Cardinals to show up today after maybe disappointing the last few weeks. And to your point on the over, I mean, I've bet against the Patriots a few times, luckily with some success, some late, some tough games. But Drake May has impressed me, his ability to extend plays and big arm, particularly now in the, Cardinals kind of weather-controlled environment. He's a guy with a big arm who can create explosive plays. So, yeah, I don't mind that over at all. So it'd be Harrison Jr. for a prop. And, yeah, I kind of don't disagree at all with the over. It feels like a game where Cardinals offense gets going, and Patriots will probably do enough with May's ability to extend plays. And, when they get down, what I've noticed, I think I had them against bet against them against the Rams recently, and I want to say the Titans before that. What I did notice is as they get down, they're more aggressive in their neutral pass rate, and his ability to extend plays and push it down the field is obviously much different than what they had early in the year with some of the quarterbacks. So, yeah, Harrison Jr. receiving yards and the over makes sense to me.
Love it. By the way, if you see me go on mute, I'm just addressing some people in TikTok, and I'm telling them who you are and where they can find us and find you and whatnot. So just don't want you to think I'm being rude, but yeah, but just Speedy Gonzalez will lock down Marvin. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about that. 80 plus receptions now with no TD. Wow. McBride ever going to get in the red zone? Yeah, no.
Another thing I said while you were gone is if Gonzalez is elite, there's no doubt about that.
Right.
But he rarely, I guess what you call in quotation mark, travels with the other team's best receiver. He generally stays his own side of the field. So I think Arizona, if they're smart, can kind of move Harrison around and find some ways to get him the ball, particularly if he's Kyler's go-to target with man-to-man. You're not going to throw it at Gonzalez for sure.
Right, right.
He's elite as it gets.
Okay. And yeah, on that note, Drake May, I was pretty wrong about him and Bo Nix, but I wasn't a Bo Nix hater. I was more of a Sean Payton hater. He's proved me wrong. And then I did not think Drake May was going to transition well into.
Personally, I find that more impressive given the supporting cast May has. I know
Yep.
they're not wins, but you look at other young QBs who come out with poor teams, and a lot of them just don't have the, whether it's the makeup or the toughness or the intangibles to even have any success, and it kind of ruins guys. So for him to be able to put some nice games together and use his legs, that's one thing I had no idea he was as explosive with his mobility.
Mhm.
Particularly, you get a game now on a kind of a faster track. I'd expect him to have a pretty good game as well.
All right, good stuff. Let's keep it moving. This might be the game of the day, aside from your Steelers Eagles, which is also a great matchup.
Yep.
We got a great 4 o'clock slate. Wow. All right, Buffalo and Detroit. Steak's best bet is on the Buffalo Bills. Therefore, I too am on the Buffalo Bills because no matter what, we tail or I am tailing the best bets of the fellow degenerate family, regardless. But I got to tell you, we had a meeting a few weeks ago. I said, listen, we got to get better about not betting on bad teams and not fading good teams. And I wrote in the newsletter, Steak listened to half of that. I think, though, at the end of the day, I'm comfortable with this wager because the Lions aren't going 16-1. They're just not. Um, I love Josh Allen. How could you not? I like the Bills. How could you not? I love Detroit. This can be a great game. Total got bet up from 51.5 to 55, which is insane for an NFL total. Um, I, I almost wish this is a game I just didn't have a dog in the fight because I would just sit back and enjoy it.
Yep.
But you'd have to imagine, especially after we just saw the Bills and Josh Allen's performance, we've seen what the Lions do at home. They're in a dome. You'd have to imagine everybody's going to expect points. It would be probably a gross under, I think. But in terms of a player prop, the one guy that's been killing me lately, and he's on my fantasy team, is James Cook. And I don't know what's going on, but they're like saying they're hinting at saving him a little bit for the playoffs or something like that. Buffalo's defense got exposed last weekend. They just kind of similar to how they did against the Ravens. So maybe there's a real big problem with them going on the road and playing top teams. If I had to pick one guy in this game, I would go back to Jahmyr Gibbs. I would be on Gibbs rushing yards. Other than that, though, I don't really know how else I would play this. So any thoughts in Bills Lions?
Yeah, fantastic game. I kind of like that conversation you guys had about not betting on bad teams and not fading good ones. It's probably a pretty smart way to approach it.
Yeah.
I mean, they profiled me as probably the best team in the NFL right now, no doubt. And I guess love them or hate them, their aggressive style, I really like to watch. You really never know what you're going to see from down to down, particularly when they get some of those fourth down decisions. I like it from a pure math point of view. I think they're ahead of the curve, so to speak. Yeah, for this one, I guess you've heard the narrative all week. You mentioned Chernoff earlier. Yes, I credit him on saying it because he said it a few times about the Lions' struggles against mobile quarterbacks. And I'm sure others have said it too. I'm just referencing his podcast, but anyone generally that's mobile at all has gone over the rushing yards. And of course, Allen is a guy who is well capable of doing that. So I would imagine Josh Allen rush yards is a popular one today. For
Good
me,
point.
I would probably, and even if you kind of, I guess, isolate the playoff games. And I know this isn't a playoff game, but my point being a big high profile game, Allen's a guy who's always used his legs more in those situations. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if, particularly again on a faster track, if he goes over his rush yards. The guy I'd be interested in, you mentioned Gibbs, that makes a lot of sense. Anytime the Bills have lost, it's due to the rush defense. But Keon Coleman coming back off the wrist injury, I guess has my attention a little bit. Obviously a young guy, but if you look at how he grades against man coverage, it's actually the best on the Bills receiving core. And why the Lions have given up high rush yardages to quarterbacks is they play the highest man coverage rate in the NFL. What does that mean? Well, it means a lot of defenders have their back turned as they're running with receivers, which means quarterbacks can kind of escape and have a ton of open space. So Coleman, to me, a guy coming off a wrist, probably undervalued. Not a lot of people kind of are familiar with him, perhaps. But I think he profiles the guy that they may target a little bit more, just given his success against man coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you would have to expect a monster Josh Allen game, given I guess just the gravity of the game. Feels like if he goes has a big game, he may as well close the case on the MVP, which I think is probably should already be closed anyway, personally. But yeah, that's how I see it. Great game. Kind of lean Bills maybe, but
All right, we'd like to hear that.
yeah, I mean, it feels like you're buying them off, a loss, and I think they're right up there with the Lions in terms of pure talent. It's just a matter of who makes the big plays probably in the fourth quarter, and I think probably the best playmaker on the field is Allen. So I guess put your trust in him to make the big play down the stretch, and you do have, I guess, a couple of points in your back pocket in case it's kind of a late field goal win by the Lions too. So
Yep.
yeah, so I'd look for Allen to have a big game from a daily fantasy point of view, and Keon Coleman maybe more under the radar guy to potentially be used more than you would expect, even off injury.
Love it. Okay. All right, Freddie, couple more games. We'll finish strong here. Again, thank you very much for your time. It's much appreciated. Your Steelers and the Eagles. The Eagles are 5.5 point favorites at home, total 43. I got to tell you, our guy, not mid-major Matt, I think you're familiar with. He hit me up early in the week. He said, I'm in love with the Eagles. I've heard some other smart people on the Eagles as well. And I am by no means trying to go against it. And I see all the reasons and logic. My favorite one, if you wanted to bet the Eagles this week, is that I love betting on a team after they almost slipped up and lost to an inferior opponent. And that's exactly what the Eagles did. So I would like to bet on them in this spot. However, like I told you when we started, I'm just going to respect Mike Tomlin and the Steelers as a dog. And it feels like a spot where they're getting a comfortable amount of points. So even if I was just reading the line, I'm like, wow, the odds makers are respecting the shit out of the Eagles. That would make me want to lean into them more for my style of betting. But I feel like this is when Tomlin and the Steelers are not trendy. So concerns me a little bit. Good for you as a fan, maybe. Not good for you as a bettor, because I know you're fading your team today. But I'm going to stay out of it. Total at 43. So what are your thoughts, and do you have a player that you would target in this game?
Yeah, so again, I did a little write up just at a fun pastime on my Twitter, kind of outlining, I guess, my full thought process. So I won't go through it all, but the offense without Pickens, you mentioned last week, really struggled early. Outside of Calvin Austin, who's kind of a speedster, they really lack playmakers who can separate against man coverage, and that's what Philly's going to play. They have three talented corners there, and Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and Darius Slay. So it's going to put a lot of pressure on the outside on Mike Williams and some of these other guys, Scotty Mitchell, and all these other guys who are moving up the depth chart now. So I don't buy it personally. And the Eagles' rush defense has been pretty strong all year. Steelers last week ramped up their rush rate, but I don't think they're necessarily going to find success there, and I think they might get into a trailing game state. On the other side, like I said, there's been a lot of noise out of Philly all week about the pass game, even though Barkley has had a ton of success, of course, and it's all about winning games. A.J. Brown wants the ball. Everyone is questioning Hurts' ability to push it down the field. And I guess in this game, with Deshaun Elliott out, the Steelers run-stopping safety, I think they're going to probably bring probably Minka down a little bit. I think they said they were going to switch him back to kind of the box safety, and he's been very good this year, even though he hasn't got interceptions. That kind of picking the right spots to shade on the field and limiting big plays that Steelers against. So I think it's a Hurts game, like I mentioned. I think Barkley's been the man all year. It makes sense with Elliott out to target him again, but I saw Hurts's pass prop at just under 200 yards, and he hasn't gone over 200 in ages, but it feels like a game to me where they maybe zig when people think they're going to zag, and they come out and throw them the ball. I think I saw a quote from Sirianni very early in the week saying we want to get the ball in his hands early and get it out and get him into a rhythm. That to me, again, reading between the lines is saying we want to throw it a bit more. Steelers are known for being a very physical up front team with, Cam Hayward and all their D linemen there. So I do think when they get in the most trouble is when teams can spread them out. And obviously with AJ Brown and with Devonta Smith and all those guys, they have the ability. And if the Steelers go cover one with one single high safety, some big plays to be had there. So I like the Eagles. Unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong. And I think for me, I don't really want to pick between the receivers. So if I was going to pick a prop, it would be Jalen Hurts over pass yards. I know it's probably one, given what has been going on there the last few weeks, but I got to go with my gut in the matchup. If Minka's down in the box a little bit more, I just don't like some of their other safeties' ability to help the corners, who have been a bit questionable in my eyes as I've watched the last few weeks, particularly that Bengals game when they don't have that crowd. It's not Heinz Field anymore, but Steelers home turf with the fans into it, they generally feed off that a lot more. Whereas on the road, when communication isn't an issue, I think Hurts can probably find some good matchups.
Real Nicky Gamble said, does Freddie post the props he has today anywhere? I believe you post them on your Twitter, correct?
Talking through all these, but I've only actually bet one, which is
that's right.
It's a prop show, so you're trying to talk about props on every game, and if people agree, great. If they don't, that's great too. But yeah, I post whatever I bet on Twitter. So Bellinger over 14.5 yards was the only one I bet, because I'm saying all that about Hurts. Am I fully confident that he will have a great game today? No, but that's how I kind of read the game. I read it as everyone expects it to be Barkley since Elliott is out. I'm sure you'll hear about that on the preview shows. But I think just kind of looking at in pro sports, when you hear the narrative all week, like if you're reading the local media and they're saying we can't pass the ball or we suck passing the ball, what generally happens the next game? Well, they improve in that area. They target that area all week. So I think the Eagles' pass game is probably going to get going today.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much. Nikki, you are the number one distraction follower we have in Twitch right now. I don't know what's going on with you lately. If you want to know if he's on anything on CBB, follow him at Freddie Mills. I just shared his link to his Twitter. You can go there as well. All right, Freddie, let's finish strong here. We've got 2 more games, I believe. So 3 games, including the night game. The Colts and the Broncos. I fear that the Colts might be the duping of the day. I like the Colts a lot coming into this week. I wanted to get there. And then the story of my NFL season has been liking a side all week and then betting it and then realizing everybody else is on that side, and then I get screwed and lose. Almost happened to me with the Niners the other night. So the Colts were, I think, 5 or 4.5 point dogs. They're down to 3.5 at FanDuel. The Colts are an interesting team because they're pretty good ATS. They're 8-5, but the Broncos are better. Broncos are 10-3 ATS. And I've told myself, kind of like what I'm telling myself for staying off of the Eagles here, is I'm just going to go ahead and respect Sean Payton. And I'm not going to fade Bo Nix. And Indianapolis is a team that I also don't necessarily like betting against. Steichen, I can't get a read on. Sometimes he's really good, sometimes not so much. Anthony Richardson is a roller coaster of a player to have money on. I think after a bye week, he can come out and play quite well. I don't know how he's going to play in a place like Denver. Right. I don't know that he's been here before in his professional career. So I don't really want to get involved. Total's at 43.5. But if you were forcing me to make a bet in this game, I'd probably take the points with Indianapolis. So I'm going to sit this one out. And then in terms of a prop, I can't even really figure out which way I see this game going, who I see performing well. I don't know that I really respect the Colts defense that much. So I'd probably be fine playing a Cortland Sutton or a Bo Nix something and just leaning into it. And then on the flip side, I'm okay with playing, it might be kind of square. Maybe it's hitting every game, but Anthony Richardson, longest completion, something like that. But I'm going to stay out of this game. I've got nothing. Do you have a lean?
For me, again, I respect what the Broncos have been doing. You mentioned their ATS record, so I think they've been underrated by odds makers all year. I guess young quarterback who's done better than expected. And Richardson, I drafted him in fantasy, unfortunately, this year. So I know all about his up and down nature. For me, I guess from a prop point of view, I saw the Broncos without their cornerback number 2, Riley Moss. So leads me to believe Steichen might throw the ball more than you think. I know the Colts are a high neutral rush rate team, but when you see kind of a key personnel out, you try and do that. Broncos are another man-heavy team. I believe, again, top 5 in man-to-man rate. So I would think they would target the guy who is manned up with Riley Moss. No offense to him. And then when I looked at who I guess grades as their best man-to-man receiver, it's really 2 guys. Josh Downs, who I thought I saw this morning, is playing, but he has a shoulder injury, which is a little bit scary if you bet that prop, because again, if he takes one big hit, maybe he aggravates it and leads the game. So the guy I'd be targeting is Alec Pierce, who's been pretty quiet the last few weeks if you look at his box scores, but he's right behind Josh Downs in kind of man-to-man grade and big playability. And if you look at some of his snap counts, they're not going down. So he's just maybe not getting the ball as much. Maybe it's due to matchups, or maybe just I haven't watched the Colts games, but the snap share and stuff looks good to me, and the matchup seems good. And Richardson, I guess if he does anything well, is use his legs and throw the deep ball, right? He likes to throw the deep. Accuracy is an issue, I guess, but he does kind of throw it down the field. So I thought I saw Pierce's receiving prop only at like 26.5 earlier. That's really only one catch for I guess the way he plays. So that was my best lean when I saw that. I don't really have a big lean on the game, like I said. I've kind of come to respect the Broncos a little bit more, and the Colts are hard to trust with Richardson from a full game point of view, particularly on the road. And to like to target him maybe at home when in a more climate controlled fast track where he can use his legs a bit more. So Alec would be my guy.
All right. Alec Pierce. Yep. That's pretty low, 25.5 receiving yards, but he, his last 2 games, been a little quiet. 1 catch, 39. That's all you need. And then 6 targets, 2 catches, 16 yards against the Patriots on the road. So, okay. Don't hate that at all. All right. Talk to me about my Bucks on the road against the Chargers. This is a tough spot for the Bucks. They've got a 5-week stretch here where they've got 4 on the road. So they won 3 straight coming out of the bye at New York, at Carolina, then at home against the Raiders, took care of business. I think this is a really good time to be playing the Chargers, though. So that kind of benefits them. The Chargers coming off that game against the Chiefs. You've got some injuries. I don't know if Ladd's playing. I think Herbert's got dealing with an ankle injury, but he should be fine. I don't know who he's throwing the ball to today. So if Ladd is out, and I also think J.K. Dobbins is on the IR. So the Bucks, though, are dealing with injuries. Antoine Winfield in the secondary is out. He's their best player. And then I think Bucky Irving's going to play, but obviously we saw what happened to him last week. He's very limited. So could be the Rachaad White game. Total 46. Look, I as a Bucks fan, I don't give any bias in my bets. I have no problem fading the Bucks. But there are times that I like them. I can't tell you that what my record is on or against them this year, but I like them. I like them with the 3 in LA. I think Baker, he was a Ram. He's got a little familiarity playing in this place. Although you don't see the team playing against the Chargers in LA very often. So one thing I would do in this game is I would lean into the Bucks rush defense. I don't trust their secondary, but I would fade whoever is going to be the running back 1 for the Chargers. And I think that's going to be Gus Edwards, if I'm not mistaken. Let me pull it up here and see if I can find anything. Yeah, Gus Edwards, 36.5 rushing yards is it's a low number, but that's all he gets. He got 36 against the Chiefs last game. He got 32 against Atlanta, 9 carries for 11 yards against Baltimore. I trust the Bucks run defense here. I don't know that I trust their pass defense. So that's all I really have in this. And I don't know what I like in terms of a Bucks prop. Do you have anything?
I'm kind of interested to see how pregame workouts go. I read Ladd is expected to play, but they're going to put him through his paces pregame, which I guess I've been burned on that before, where you think a guy's going to play because one of these insiders say he is, and then he works out and then doesn't go. So I want to see who is actually out there for the Chargers. You mentioned they're a bit short in the receiving game. Will Dissly, their tight end, is out today.
Right.
If McConkey plays, personally, I kind of want to bet the Chargers -3 at like plus money, or maybe you can get -2.5. -120 or whatever it is. a couple of reasons why. You mentioned some of the Bucks issues in the secondary. You mentioned Whitfield. I believe they're also down Jordan Whitehead and
Whitehead.
Mike Edwards, I think. Both are safeties.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to see in warm-ups, or maybe try and dig a little bit deeper on reading, is how Herbert's ankle/leg is going to impact his mobility. I was watching some of the limited kind of beat reporter stuff that was tweeted out about him moving around, and he seemed fine, but I guess you never know. So this might be a late to the window type bet for me if I kind of like what I see and lag goes. Another reason I kind of like it is the Bucks, as you know, are kind of zone heavy. They like to bring blitz. Bowles is a blitz heavy scheme, and they have to play zone behind it. But Herbert it's very good metrics against the blitz and very good metrics against zone. And if you look at, I guess, like you said, we don't like the Chargers playmakers, but against zone, you don't really need to separate as much. You just need to kind of know where the windows are. So I kind of like their profile more against zone than I would against man heavy scheme. And then finally, if you look at the other side of the ball, I mean, the Chargers generally have been a pretty solid team on defense all year. But what they do again is they're a high zone rate team too. And Baker kind of makes his hay with these big plays, with these talented playmakers on the outside, a lot better metrics against man-to-man. So if I get the right, I suppose, lead up pregame in the workouts, I kind of maybe want to bet the Chargers. I guess prop-wise, I don't really want to trust Ladd, I don't think, because you don't know what his health is and if he's going to be limited or whatever. I guess the one that makes sense is coming in for Disley is Stone Smart, tight end. Then last week performed pretty well. Obviously against, like I said, against zone, you want probably a big tight end in those seams and those kind of windows. And his receiving prop is probably, not much, given that he's a backup and guys aren't familiar and he hasn't had these explosive games. You probably get it under 30 yards, I'd imagine. So he's someone I have rostered in a DFS team just because, again, I think, Herbert's probably going to throw the ball because the Bucks, everyone throws it against the Bucks. I think the highest neutral pass rate against. And he's a guy I think that might get some extra looks than normal. So, I guess that's my long-winded way of saying I like the Chargers if I get the right reports.
Right.
So it's hard to fully comment now because if Ladd is ruled out or you see something like Herbert is limited mobility wise, then it's, pass and move on.
All right. Hope you're wrong, but you've got pretty good reasoning to be right. General Mitchie Moss tuned in at 35,000 feet heading to Vegas. Oh, that's right. General Mitchie Moss, a fellow Delta flyer. And he is a Falcons fan going to Vegas with a crew for the Falcons game. I wonder, Mitchie Moss, is Cornfields going with you too? I saw he DM'd me the other day. He was on a flight and someone had the window up, and he is, I'm a big window up guy when I'm on a daytime flight. And apparently everybody likes their window down to take naps at 10 a.m. Not me. Anyways, great listen, says H Win. Thank you, H. By the way, make sure if you're not following Freddie Mills, you do so on Twitter at Freddie Mills 7. I did share the link as well. And Freddie, appreciate your time. So, I guess real quick, we just jump ahead to that game. Do you have anything on the Falcons radar? I actually love the Falcons, but I'm terrified to lay that many points with the Falcons on the road in Vegas. But it's a Monday night game. It's not a Sunday night game, so you don't have to force anything. But just out of curiosity, and for Mitchie Moss, since he's heading to the game, I would say everybody is maybe a week early on the Kirk Cousins masterclass revenge spot in Minnesota. Now there's no pressure on him in that sense, although he is on primetime. Primetime Kirk is pretty stinky. I would take him over touchdown passes. Did you have anything on Falcons Raiders?
Not really. I haven't dug into the Monday games.
That's fair.
But obviously, I would think anytime I'm looking at the Raiders anyway, and I guess Falcons have got better with their pass rush. I think the last few weeks, I think you referenced it after bye. Their I guess pressure rate has gone up. But to me, I guess with the Raiders, they only have a couple of playmakers in Bowers and Jacoby Myers. I think Myers maybe had a decent game last week, more so in garbage time. I think he would be the guy I'd target if anything. But at this point, I haven't really dug into the matchup a whole lot. I just prefer, I suppose, fading the Falcons secondary with Myers. I mean, you can't go wrong with Bowers either. Bowers is ridiculous. It seems like every week, but Jacoby Myers on the outside would be my play, if anything. But again, very limited. This is just completely off the top of my head right now because I haven't really looked at the Monday games.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right, let's finish here. Sunday night. Hold on one second. Let's go to Green Bay and the Seahawks. I've heard a lot about weather in this game. This was Chernoff doing, I think, what was necessary. But although I was getting a little fatigued from hearing about the wind models in this game, but the total could potentially drop 4 to 5 points if you get winds of 40 miles an hour. Green Bay 2.5 on the road. These are two teams that I just don't want to bet against. I respect Matt LaFleur. It looks like Geno and the Seahawks are have some dog in them and are playing quite well after the bye week too. So Mike McDonald at times, the Seahawks look like the most poorly coached team in the NFL.
Yep.
And then at the defense is stepping up and impressing me. So holding the Cardinals to 18 points, I give them credit for that. I'm going to sit this one out. You have anything in the Packers Seahawks?
Yeah, kind of like I see and heard you talk about this. It makes sense. Like rookie quarterbacks, like rookie head coaches, probably make mistakes that they learn from. So I think probably next year he'll be a little bit better. I do like kind of his defensive schemes and stuff. This one was hard for me to read just because the Packers. I mean, anytime I look at their prop market, it feels like it's a new guy every week. It's just really a hard team to pin down in terms of who they want to. I guess give the ball to on the outside. It feels like one week it's Watson, another week it's someone else. So don't really have any level of confidence in what they do. I guess I would say I kind of like to target, I guess, running backs off of. I think I mentioned earlier when we were talking, like off a bye, I believe Green Bay is. So Jacobs kind of with fresh legs, big body, these types of things. If the weather is going to be a little bit dicey, I think it could be rainy. I'm not sure on the wind. I guess be my best look right now, like him with fresh legs and maybe more of a, non-ideal environment, we would say. Seattle, I find also hard to kind of pin down offensively as well. Like Geno, 1 week it's Smith and Jigba. Then, of course, you got Mick.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these, he spreads the ball around, I find, very well, regardless of the matchup. And the backfield seems to always kind of split the carry. So I don't really have anything to narrow in on there. I guess my very small lean will be Jacobs in some way with his rush yards, just because, again, I respect Seattle's D line, but he's a big body with fresh legs. They have pretty good run game, pretty good O-line. So not sure what his prop will be, but I think that's kind of the name that comes to mind in this type of matchup that could potentially be more run heavy if some of the wind, like you said, is up and maybe it's a bit rainy, but I'd have to dig a bit deeper on the weather there.
Jacob, 79.5 rushing yards, 18.5 attempts. He has been awesome. 3 touchdowns against Detroit, only 66 yards. But before that, he also, against the Niners, 26, 106, and 3 touchdowns. He's been a touchdown scoring machine. And we know Charbonnet ran very well against the Cardinals. If anybody wanted to lean into that, fair enough. I had a couple people ask me in TikTok about Charbonnet.
Out of curiosity, what has Tucker Kraft been up to, their tight end?
Sure. Yeah. Ask away. This is why we do this. Tucker Kraft.
Just thinking, I haven't looked at this game a lot, but looking at some of those Seahawks Cardinals games, the tight end was a major issue for Seattle in those matchups. So yeah, the more I think about their past and kind of what other teams have done, I think the tight end would be the way to go here. Tucker Kraft.
So 5 targets, 3 catches, 41 yards, and a touchdown against Detroit. Miami, 6 catches, 78 yards. Wow. And then before that, a little quiet against the Niners, but he did get in the end zone. So that's ride Tucker Kraft. Why not? Especially if there is wind and there might not be that many deep balls. You would imagine Tucker Kraft would be a go-to third down safety valve. Okay, so Jacobs in that game. I don't like anything necessarily on the Seahawks side. It's always hard for me to.
I changed that to Kraft now, if anything, because
like
just trying to think back on NFL, like most sports, copycat league, and what Trey McBride did in some recent matchups. I mean, if you're LaFleur watching some of these things, I think you try and target their defense the same way, which would be with your tight end, who also has some, I guess, explosive. It's not the same level, but yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense the more I think about it to be a Tucker Kraft game.
Green Bay 1-4 against top 10 defenses. Hill Daddy says Freddie loves finding the right TE plays. Yeah, he could be a tight end whisperer. All right, Freddie, last game. It's a Monday night one, so I don't spend too much time on it because I will talk about it tomorrow. But before we get you out of here and shut it down, again, thank you very much for spending the time. This has been awesome. Bears and Vikings. Vikings 7-point favorites, total 43.5. Anything intrigue you in this game? Obviously, you don't have a bet on it, so you passed. But did you get close to maybe playing anything?
No, not really. I find where the Bears are now, like I just find they're tough to trust either way. I know a lot of people are making a case last week when that I found that kind of a bit funny when that number crashed at the 49ers, and then they absolutely got crushed from the opening kickoff. So I wonder maybe if the market is a week late, maybe like, or the Bears are just kind of a dead team now. I know they've made some changes there, and I know a lot of people like to target the new coach angle, but I haven't seen enough there to be, I guess, confident in what you'll see. Looking at what Minnesota likes to do, definitely kind of a pressure heavy team. And I suppose if I'm just looking at the prop market here now, because like I said, I haven't looked at this matchup a lot. On the outside, I mean, DJ Moore is still a guy I think who can create the big play. And when I've bet against Minnesota recently, I want to say it was as recently as Harrison Jr. in their game a couple of weeks ago. I'm looking for guys on the outside who can take advantage of these blitzes and with extra space. And DJ Moore, to me, and at top of my head, comes as a guy who can catch the ball in space and maybe break a bigger run. And the Vikings have had their issues with their pass defense recently. It's just a matter of, do you trust, I suppose, Caleb to get the ball to him? But that'd be the guy off the top of my head I think could be a DJ Moore game.
Okay. All right, Freddie, we're going to do one more thing before we wrap it up here. So again, make sure you follow Freddie Mills on Twitter, TikTok as well. If you're listening, at Freddie Mills 7 on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Daniel Bellinger,
correct.
Over receiving yards is the play today. And just going to run through real quick the player we like in each game the most. I'm just going to shout him out. We're going to go rapid fire.
Yep.
Jalen Waddle, you mentioned, and I'm going to put him in receivers. And again, these are just leans. We are not telling you what to bet. You make your own decisions, bet responsibly. And if you tail anything, do it at your own risk. Commanders, Brian Robinson Jr. I'm going to play his over rushing yards. I think we get a Dan Quinn, good performance from the defense coming out of the bye week. However, I would proceed with caution if you're going to be on the Commanders today. That feels like a trap game. I like the Jets. Freddie pointed out Garrett Wilson. I am more than okay with that. I'll be going back to Aaron Rodgers. Passing yards. Cowboys, Freddie, I think the name you mentioned was Dowdle.
Rico Dowdle, if anyone.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't like how many people are on the Panthers as a favorite today. I'm not fading them, but it's not something I'm going to put my money on. This is the game Freddie does have a play in. We just talked about it. Bellinger, the Giants tight end, over receiving yards. Going to stay away from that game. The Chiefs Browns, we're going to be on Travis Kelce. I'm going to go with receiving yards there. Also, that would be my square play of the day with the Chiefs. The Titans Bengals, best bet of mine is the over. Sounds like Freddie co-signs that. Can see points in this matchup. Got the Brian Callahan revenge angle there. You like Will Levis? I'm good with that. I like Titans offense.
If the wind allows us, I think maybe keep an eye on that over the next couple of hours. But if they're able to throw the ball, it could be a good in-play spot, right?
Sure.
Like watch the first couple of drives and say, yeah, these guys are letting the ball rip through the wind. This was overdone by the media. No issue. Maybe target it then, because I think matchup wise both teams want to throw it, but unless you're completely sure, you got to know there's a bit of risk, in my opinion.
Yep. Ridley, I'm good with Ridley. I might play Ridley straight. And if Tony Pollard plays, I still like him, but I'm a little nervous about the injury. So maybe it could be Tajay Spears as a sneaky guy there. We like points in the Patriots Cardinals game. You mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm good with that. I kind of like Kyler Murray to do well. I think MJ mentioned Cardinals highest scoring team 11-1. Don't hate that at all. Bills are Steak's best bet. Oh, and by the way, the Dolphins are Greg's best bet. If you haven't read the newsletter, you can do so here. I'll put it in the chat for you guys. The let's see, the Bills. You said Keon Coleman. I don't really have a player I would go Jahmyr Gibbs rushing, I think, but I'm a Gibbs.
I like that too, for sure.
Yeah. And then Freddie is on the Eagles official side bet, although he is a Steelers fan. You know, I love fading the fan. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to get involved in this game, but you like Hurts. Makes a lot of sense. You gave some good analysis on that. I don't really have a player in this as much as I'd like to bet like a Najee Harris get nasty type of game. You said you're going to need a Jerome Bettis type of performance out of him to win. Could see it, maybe. Don't sleep on Jalen Warren either. Let's see. Colts, I believe you said Alec Pierce higher than receiving yards. If you had to play something, remember, these are just leans, higher than 15.5 receiving yards. I can't get there with anything in this game. Chargers, depending on the injury, the final injury report, you like the Chargers. I lean Bucks in this one. I'd be fading Gus Edwards. I like the Bucks rush defense to perform well in this. I don't trust their secondary. How could you? And then the Packers and Seahawks, you like Josh Jacobs. Which is more than fine with me. I have nothing in this game. Bears. Oh, I'm sorry. You switched. Right. Switched Tucker Kraft.
And that might be something because I like to kind of let the day play out. And then for Sunday night, maybe pick something to make, if I like it, maybe follow through. So that might be something I add through the day if I dig in a little bit more and like kind of, I guess, where he is and read some of the media on what's been saying about him. So yeah, Tucker Kraft in that game.
Yep. Double down, Dewey. We just said he likes Coleman. I like Gibbs, and we are on the Bills. You should already know it's Steak's best bet. It's in the newsletter. Freddie, I did you say you like DJ Moore in the Bears Vikings?
Yeah, be the guy who came to mind, but I guess take that even lighter than some of the leans in the sense that I haven't really dug into some of the money.
And then Falcons, Raiders. I like the Falcons. I guess if it's square, I don't care. I like the Falcons, and I would say go Kirk Cousins over touchdown passes after he burned everybody. All right. Final in closing, again, follow Freddie Mills at Freddie Mills 7. Good luck with your Steelers. I hope you lose money and I hope your Steelers win. For no other reason than I just like Tomlin as a non-trendy dog today. Thank you very much for taking the time, Freddie. We really appreciate it. In the spaces yesterday as well. Anytime you can share your thoughts and insights, we know you do a lot of research. You don't charge anybody anything. So you're one of the good guys on here. Block out the haters and the trolls as best you can. I know it's easier said than done, but you're very much appreciated in the sports betting community on Twitter. So thank you very much, my man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. And anytime I can come on, I love doing it. Love chatting through the matchups and sports, and love what you guys are doing there. Yourself, Greg, and Steak are doing things the right way, and I love to kind of watch and follow when I can and contribute any way I can. So keep up the good work, and thanks again for having me on.
Of course. All right, Freddie, best of luck today. Enjoy your weekend. We'll chat later.
You too. Take care.
All right. See you, man. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. And Eagles L would be huge for us Lions fans. Yep, it sure would be. Falcons is tomorrow night. Yes, it is. Yep. W Freddie indeed. Freddie is a walking W. Yes, he is. This DJing guy is questionable. Fair enough. W stream. W Freddie. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. It was a great stream today. Hour and a half we cranked. I am going on another show right after this. I'm going to shut it down, give my my vocal cords a rest. And I will see you guys. If you go on my Twitter, I retweeted it. I am going on someone by the name of Chuck Bass's fantasy show. Chuck F. Bass. He, let's see, what is this show name? I'm looking forward to it. I'm not even really, it's another fantasy show is what it's called. He tweeted it here. I'm going to send you guys the tweet and go follow this and please tune in. I think it's only on YouTube. Go to that link, DJ on a fantasy show. I know, right? Should be interesting. Again, I'm not a big fantasy guy, but Chuck Bass seems like a pretty funny dude. I like his content and seems like he knows what he's talking about. So that's going to be at 11 a.m. on YouTube. Thank you, everybody in TikTok. Make sure you're following the page. We'll be on TikTok live more and more. If you're not following us there, it's very easy to get going and pretty good engagement. So the fantasy questions coming through TikTok are insane. So next time Steak is available, we'll have him do starter sit. Whether that's next week or early in the week, late in the week, we'll figure it out. I'll talk to Steak. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out. Have a great day. Let me see. Okay, there we go. Have a great day. Good luck on all your bets. I will chat with you guys later, and let's see you on another fantasy show with this Chuck Bass fella. Good luck. Hope you win more than you lose. Peace.